So we've had a bit of I know you're not recording, but I'm just saying to all members of the committee that we have to be very mindful of speaking directly into the microphone. When there's a number of people in this room, it doesn't filter to the back, and we had some concerns about hearing what it was we were saying. So if you could move your microphones and make sure that you're speaking directly into the members of committee, I'll make sure that the public do the same. That wasn't in your microphone. Sorry. Okay, so we are continuing with our public meetings, and the third of our public meetings this evening is to consider a draft plan of condominium, zoning bylaw amendment, and an official plan amendment submitted by RVL Contracting for a plan of condominium on property known as 375 Station Street, Smithville. Planning Act requires under Section 51, Sub 20, that before approving a draft plan of condominium and under Section 34, Sub 12, before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, and in Section 17, Sub 15, before passing an official plan amendment, council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect to the proposed draft plan of condominium, zoning bylaw amendment, and the official plan amendment applications. The purpose of this meeting this evening is to receive comments from the public and answer questions from the public regarding the draft plan of condominium application, the zoning bylaw amendment, and the official plan amendment. At this point, no decision has been made on any of the plans before us, and any comments received will be taken into account by council and committee in their consideration. Planning Act also requires in Section 51, Sub 53, and Section 34, Sub 13, and under Ontario Regulation 543-/06, that council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of West Lincoln before the bylaw is passed, that person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council for the Township of West Lincoln to the Ontario Municipal Board. Madam Clerk, could you please advise of the method and dates on which public notice was given?
Proper notice was given to the public by way of individual notice dated December 6, 2017.
Thank you so much. Mr. Borma, I understand that you will be giving us the reasoning and purpose for the plans before us this evening.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Application for official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and condominium draft plan of condominium has been applied for by Upper Canada on behalf of RVL Contracting, Inc. These applications are required to permit the subject property located at 375 Station Street on the northwest corner of Station Street and Spring Creek Road, being 1.2 acres, to be developed as an 11-unit condominium development known as Station Street Manor. The official plan amendment is required as the property is designated low-density residential, and the proposed development is a medium-density townhouse and semi-development. The applicants are proposing to amend the official plan to have the subject property designated to medium-density residential to permit this development. This designation permits a density of between 20 and 40 units per hectare, and the proposed development is currently at 23 units per hectare, with a total of 11 units on just half a hectare. This will contribute to a density between 46 and 67 people per hectare, depending on the number of occupants per dwelling unit, ranging from between 2 and 3. The zoning bylaw amendment is required as the property is currently zoned development in our township zoning bylaw. The applicants are proposing that the zoning be amended to residential medium density, RM2, with 3 site-specific exceptions. These are eliminating the requirement for a minimum lot area per dwelling unit, reducing the required front yard from 4.5 meters to 3.25 meters along Station Street, and if the deputy clerk can throw that up. So that's this yard here, up front along Station Street, and reducing the required rear yard abutting the agricultural lands from 6 meters to 1.4 meters, and that can be found at the west end, up here. These zoning amendments will accommodate 9 townhouse units and 2 semi-detached units. A fully detailed plan known as a site plan, will be submitted by the applicants to the site plan approval process to address any engineering or servicing issues, and it's my understanding that the applicants would submit that following zoning official plan and condo approval. The subject property is on the edge of Smithville's current urban boundary. A minor boundary adjustment was completed on this property in 2015 to 2016 to reduce the size of the lot to fit within the existing urban boundary of Smithville. As such, the surrounding lands to this lot from the north and the west are agriculture and are currently field cropped. There's a process currently underway by the region and the township examining the need to expand the Smithville urban boundary, as you know. And it'll take some time before those studies are completed to determine where, if and where additional lands are required. As this development is within a gateway node of Smithville, the applicants were required to provide the township with some urban design details of this development for the construction of the proposed dwelling units. And this is currently being reviewed by the regional urban design expert. And we have yet to receive those regional comments. Township staff recommend that a recommendation report be prepared and brought to this committee once all agency and comments have been received, and we're still waiting on a few. And the applicants and agent are here this evening, and they do have a presentation to give to you guys about this development. That's all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Borma. So you've stated that the applicant or agent are here to speak to the application, so why don't we just move on to that? I wasn't moving my mouse and the screen was changing.
Thank you. Good evening, members of committee and the public. My name is Jennifer Vida, and I am the agent here on behalf of RVL Contracting. I'm a registered professional planner, and I'd like to thank town staff for their detailed presentation and for helping us process the applications. Tonight, we are here to fulfill the requirements of the Planning Act by holding a public meeting for the applications of official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of condo. What happened?
Oops.
Oh, it's PDF? Oh, okay. That's okay. The subject lands are located on the northwest side of Spring Creek Road and 30 Road. The property is an important parcel of land as it is the first property that is within the urban boundary as you come into town. The property is the main entryway and the first thing that people will see as they enter. Because of the importance of the parcel of land, a very carefully designed plan is being proposed. The plan that is proposed includes high-quality architectural design, sensitive site layout, and enhanced landscape treatments. The proposal is to create an 11-unit condominium townhouse development with access through a private road off Spring Creek. A conceptual landscape plan was prepared to identify opportunities for enhanced landscaping, buffering, and fencing within the development. There's a copy of the proposed landscape plan on the screen for your reference. So special attention has been given to the streetscape along Spring Creek and 30 Road. From a landscape perspective, additional landscaping will be provided along the two public roads in order to ensure an attractive streetscape as you come into town. The additional landscaping can be achieved with the use of generous landscaped green space along both streets. The development proposes a mix of 1- and 2-story dwelling units, which will encourage a range of household types, as shown in the rendering in front of you. The bungalows may appeal to retirees and seniors, whereas the 2 stories may appeal to families. The units that will side onto 30 Road have enhanced architectural design. That's the second picture you see at the bottom. The dwellings include variation of roof levels, additional roof pitches, variation in architectural materials along the side of the dwelling to make it appear more like the front of a dwelling. All of the design elements will support an attractive streetscape along 30 Road as you enter the town. As staff has noted, the subject property is identified in the growth plan and the regional plan as greenfield area. These two land use documents require greenfield lands to be developed at higher densities than the rest of the urban area, and this is to ensure efficient use of land. That is also to ensure the town can accommodate the projected growth. The development proposal is in line with the density targets from the growth plan and the regional official plan. The density that is proposed is an example of the type of density that is required to meet the greenfield density targets set by these two land use policy documents. It is important that the town maintains the density targets set by the province and the region to demonstrate that the lands within the urban boundary are being used wisely, which will support any future urban boundary expansions. Overall, the proposed development is aligned with the applicable land use policies, provides for an enhanced sensitive development layout that will act as an entrance feature to the town. In order to support the proposed development application for official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of vacant land condo are required. That concludes my presentation, but I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you, and I'm sure you'll be able to supply a copy to the clerk in due course, either this evening or, excellent. Thank you so much. Now, members of the public, this is your chance to speak or address the item on the table. Is there anyone here wishing to make comment or question this item? Okay, I'm just going to ask one more time, or is there anyone here wishing to make oral or written submission on the proposed draft plan of condominium, zoning bylaw amendment, and/or official plan amendment currently being discussed? This may be the only public meeting, and having said that, it is therefore the public's opportunity to have comments should they wish to state them now, as the OMB may not consider comments made during any other committee or council meeting. And anyone wishing to speak should come forward to the microphone now. Sir, I wasn't digging for people to come forward, but we do have an obligation to make sure that you've had opportunity. Excellent. So you'll state your name and address and your questions or concerns.
Sure. My name is Rick Boravage. I live on Hornack Road. Really, I didn't come here with any, I came here more to understand what was being proposed. And I think this gentleman here touched on it, and it states on page 5 in your document, and I'm really looking for clarification, where the outcome of this decision will relate to what's going to be decided in the future for that, the surrounding properties. So if it's decided that that parcel of land will be medium density, there's a large property right now, the farmland. Does that mean that automatically applies to the rest of the properties, or does that have to be reviewed at another town council?
I believe that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Treble, but in fact, that is the edge of the urban boundary now, and any lands that would come into the urban boundary would go through a very comprehensive study as to what kind of zoning and
So an additional meeting similar to this one?
much
talk about
bigger,
the expansion.
many meetings and much bigger. Right,
And
Mr.
the-
Treble?
For sure,
Many.
there'll be many consultation opportunities. The only thing I think that's probably also worth putting on the table, Madam Chair, just for the benefit of the individual at the podium, the province is upping the density standards. So this is greenfield, which means it must achieve 50 people and jobs per hectare, but the province is looking at higher densities. So if additional land comes into the urban boundary beyond this property, it may be a higher density than this one. It might not be 50-foot singles as a continuation of the Station Meadows subdivision. So I just want that on the record. Current provincial policy is saying this is too low a density to go forward.
But that's on average across the region. And as a plan comes forward, there'll be a mix of the types of housing. So we're not going to have townhouses all over Smithville, but we're also not going to have single-family 50-foot
No,
lots.
I understand. It's the
Agreed.
mix that's happening
That's right.
nowadays, and we're recent to the area, so, I can't complain. We just had a new.
I just
build
don't want to
as well.
preempt the whole idea of
Fair
what
enough.
could come in the plan, the official plan and secondary plans for that area.
And And the other comment that this lady had made was everything's going to be set up for driving in on Station Road. Well, we live off of Spring Creek, which is the side road there. I assume that's all going to be transferred to the side road as far as the appeal from the area. You may, maybe I'm kind of implying here, but it sounded like driving into the gateway, everything's going to look nice from Station Road. Now you turn the corner onto Spring Creek. I'm assuming everything's going to be maintained to that same degree.
So maybe if that's your concern, we can have that question addressed. And that is, where will traffic in and out of this plan of condominium, where will it be coming from? And I believe it's on Spring Creek. Go, please. You may as well.
Yes, the main entrance to the development will actually be on the Spring Creek right here.
You need to speak from the microphone so that, sorry. Come, we're going to get a laser pencil, trust me.
Okay, here we go. So the main entrance is actually off of Spring Creek right here. So the road comes in and turns into a T, but there's no access from 30 Road. It's a dead end there, so that'll all be landscaped. But I think your question was more about, will the streetscaping be of a high-end quality? Yes. Yes, so the buildings, the back of the buildings have been enhanced in terms of their architectural design, as well as enhanced landscaping around, along Spring Creek as well.
And being a condominium, I assume that's maintained by the residents, or is there condominium fees that's done by a corporation?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. It is maintained by a condominium corporation. All the residents will pay into the corporation, and there will be a comprehensive maintenance plan that gets implemented. They look after snow removal, they look after gardening, grass cutting, all that sort of stuff.
Well, thank you for the opportunity again. I was just
Thank you, sir. Are there other members of the public wishing to address this item? Seeing none, I'm going to confine the discussion to table. Are there members of the committee who wish to speak to this item? I have a speakers list starting with Mayor Joyner.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jennifer, for your excellent presentation here tonight. I might be the most unpopular person in the room here tonight, but I'm going to say this anyway.
You have concerns?
I have concerns. I have a lot of concerns. Not a lot of concerns, but I have some concerns for the very fact that this is 11 units, 9 townhouses, 2 semi-detached, as that was mentioned, and that is medium density. I understand that, and in actual fact, this area was actually high density. I don't know how it got to be high density, but it did, and so for that fact, I'm kind of somewhat glad that this is medium density. My biggest concern here tonight is the appearance, and the appearance of something that is a gateway. This is the gateway from the north, 30 Road, Regional Road 14, coming into Smithville. And as you come in, as you go south, all you're going to see is backyards.
Side yard.
And if you're looking from Station Street, you're going to see side yards. And if you're going north, you're still going to see rear yards. You're not going to see any type of frontage of this condominium corporation. So, this is our Smithville urban boundary now, right now, or, the future. Who knows? It probably won't be the way this town is growing. And, as Garrett did say, Mr. Borman did say, that we're undergoing a Smithville urban boundary study right now. I personally myself would like to see if they could go back and see if we could have some kind of different layout of the 11 units. I feel very strongly about this. Mr. Borman knows I met with him today. I've met with the director today too as well and expressed my concerns. I am not happy with only being able to see rear yard and side yards. And I know that the proponent here does an excellent job, is doing an excellent job right now here in West Lincoln and another property. I go by it all the time. I check it out. I have many discussions with Rick and the family and RVL. But I'm just not happy with our urban boundary, our gateway from the north being nothing but rear yards and side yards. So I don't know if there's the opportunity for staff and the good people from RVL to get together with the planning department and see if they can configure this property a little different. We talk about, Madam Chair?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to put on the record now, that's exactly why this is a public meeting, and that your concerns will be addressed prior to coming forward. So you're right. This is the place to make those concerns well known.
Thank you. And we talk about urban design details because it is our
Absolutely.
gateway. So my question is, if you can only see rear yards inside, what is going to be the urban design details that are going to make it attractive at this point? I can't see any, other than board-on-board fencing and perhaps the occasional brush, shrub, or tree. Those are my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Bilsma.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak on this. I also have some grave concerns. Many of the ones that were mentioned by the mayor, I would also echo. But I would also, I'm concerned about two things that I think need to be addressed. First is the entrance. The entrance that's proposed is not aligning well with the other, most particularly Hornack Road. Like, I understand that the property is only, how many hectares? One? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Because of this, the small size of the property, I think that we're not able to properly address that whole corner in what I would say is in a very efficient manner. Because of the small size, I think it's perhaps maybe the best stab at trying to develop such a small property, but I would resist committing to this because I don't know how well it would fit in the future, perhaps if our urban boundary does expand, how that would interface well with, say, Hornack Road, or having residents come in at Spring Creek Road a couple hundred feet up from the corner. As a gateway node, it may be in the future. Quick question, is this one of the proposed roundabout sites?
No, I don't think so. No.
But you know what? Not well. Okay, so that somebody said not yet. The potential for that type of node that kind of introduces people to kind of an urban setting, and they're going in different corners, may be there, and then to immediately. So the entrance is a concern for me. Okay. So just I don't think it's lining up well with the with what we already have on tap there. The second concern has to do with while this is not in our secondary plan on the northwest quadrant, it is greatly affected by it because part of that development is the development of Spring Creek Road moving west from this corner. Right now, it's virtually a dead-end road, or it's basically a glorified driveway to get to the end of Hornack Road. Well, a little bit more than a glorified driveway. But I'm assuming that as a secondary plan and as the northwest quadrant does get developed, that Spring Creek Road will be developed appropriately. And we have discussed at this horseshoe possible access to our community through that Spring Creek Road corridor. What I'm trying to get at is I think we're recognizing that Spring Creek Road could be one of the major roads of our community in terms of people come to this outside ring road, Spring Creek Road, and they can move east and get into our industrial and commercial properties, and they can move west. So coming up 30 Road, they can get into the surveys in the northwest quadrant and to the school and those that side of our community. And so I'm wondering if we are giving ourselves enough room, especially in the Spring Creek Road and that whole corner, if our setbacks are large enough. I know that they're sufficient for today, but there may come a time when we would like to be able to,
But Councillor Bilsma, just for that point, your road allowances have been defined,
yeah.
and they have been compromised by the construction on the south side now. So in fact, transportation, our traffic department, and the regions in planning will take that into consideration. That's something that will come back in the report.
So to that point, that one of the exceptions, one of the minimum is the part that's on Station Street. There's an exception requested. I think it's about a meter and a meter point
setback.
two or something like that. Yeah. So I'm very concerned that setback they're asking for is on the very corner of what I think is going to be a very busy intersection at some point. So for those reasons, the access, the lining up of the driveway, and I don't necessarily know how to correct it with the property the size it is currently. That's the first concern. And the second, that Spring Creek Road will become not necessarily a major thoroughfare, but it's going to be a key artery of our community, directing traffic into our community and around our community. So for that, I'm very concerned about the density, and specifically the density that is compelling us to have the exception of the front, I don't know if it's a front yard or a rear yard, but on the corner of Spring Creek and 30 Road. So those are my comments at this time.
Excellent. Councillor Gannon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Less technical are my concerns than my seatmate here, but I also am concerned. I think when you look at the map that was presented, it's on page 175 of our agenda, it would appear to be that the main part of town is on the Spring Creek side because of the Station Meadows development. However, we know that 30 Road is the main artery coming into town. So I would concur with the mayor's concern about the side of the development being on our main road. I think that absolutely is not the look that we would want to have. And in fact, we already have an issue with the two houses, the 6375 and 6373 on Spring Creek Road, that those are side yards there as well. I think what we want to do in the future is get away from that look of coming into backyards and coming into side yards. And so I would also like to suggest that perhaps another look be taken at whether this can be rejigged in a different way, meet the density target if need be, but certainly at least align the main street with the front of the buildings as opposed to the backyard and side yard coming in. So, thank you.
Thank you. Others? Oh, Councillor Bell. Sorry. Councillor Bell.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm glad that Mayor Joyner brought up the urban design. I was going to wait until this come back and see what they really come back with, but I think council knows my feeling about urban design. We worked at this a few years ago to bring in an urban design, and I agree 100%. I don't see any urban design on Station Street. I don't see anything on Spring Creek. That is a main intersection, and you see it no matter which way you come at it, you're looking at it. And we don't want to see a board-on-board fence or a little spruce tree sitting there. I think you need to go back and have a look at the urban design plan and see what it's really meant to do and what it's supposed to bring forward. So that's all I want to say. So.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, I think I have to weigh in here as well. And my colleagues have all talked about the side yards. I struggle with the whole idea, whether it's that it will eventually not be or whatever, the gateway to our community. I worry more so then than I do even now, because it's about eyes on the street. It's about the urban interface. It's about bringing that proximity of eyes on the street to the sidewalk, to the fact that there will be people walking past this. And I'm not saying that I'm against any kind of intensification in that particular site to make it something that will be useful, and how it will blend into ultimately what becomes a Smithville. Those kind of things don't bother me, but I am troubled by looking at side yards. I don't want fences, whether they belong to condominiums or to anyone else, get rickety, they fall down, and they get into disrepair, and that's not an issue for anyone but the condo corporation. But my bigger concern is that by and of itself, no one's going to be walking by it today, perhaps, but someday that could be a very blind spot for young people, old people walking into town in the evening, and those eyes on the street are missing. And so aside from the fact that it might be a little unsightly, and it could be scary. And what makes a community great is when there are eyes on the street and people share their front yards with the people who are walking by. So I can't say enough about that. The density, I'm not upset or opposed to. The issues for me are not the density. It is, it's not even what the future will hold. It's about the fact that I think a higher standard of urban design based on the location would be appreciated, and I'd like to see that when it comes back, but I also like to see that we rework this so that it has a friendlier type of interface such that a sidewalk to residential unit is closer and like it would be in any of the other streets in the abutting area. So those are the two comments I have at this point in time, because I couldn't hold this to the fact it is a gateway forever, but the fact that we want a higher standard is will be pleasant and would be an opportunity for it to be the gateway for the coming years. So I guess I do have one other question, that is, what is the future of Spring Creek Road in our plans? Do we know that, Mr. Treble? Is it to be a collector road, or is it to be something more substantial?
Through you, Madam Chair, the Northwest Quadrant Secondary Plan identified it as a potential for collector's purposes, but discussions we're having as part of the urban boundary next round suggest that this street might be too close into town, depending on the amount of growth. So there could be a more important collector further out. But it was identified as collector purposes, and for that reason, we're trying to minimize future entrances onto it to allow for a flow of traffic. But we know we have an interface issue with some existing housing that's already there. So there are some challenges with this road to be used for linkages to the industrial park, for example. So
That would be to be used.
yeah.
And I think that my council colleague has also made a great point that very close to the corner are we expecting to have a fairly substantial, 11 cars emptying in and out of that proximity to the corner. So if we're trying to minimize the out and in on Station Street, I'm not sure that we're going to do too much better on Spring Creek. But anyway, there are some compromises we'll have to reach, and all I'm looking for is that we have another look at this before it comes back to us. Comments further? Anything? Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, not following my own plans here. Okay, this is a technical report that is being considered by Planning Committee this evening, and a recommendation report will be forthcoming to a future planning and/or council meeting. Please be advised that once the Planning Committee and Council have made a decision with respect to the official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of condominium, and if approved by Council, a notice of its passing will be circulated with an appeal period unless Regional Council approval of the official plan amendment is required. There is an attendance sheet located at the table near the exit doors, which we would ask all present to sign. Please ensure that when signing the attendance sheet for this evening's committee meeting, that you place a check mark in the column marked RVL Contracting -375 Station Street if you wish to be advised of future meetings and/or decisions. People who are interested in observing council or committee meetings and discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on mailed notices and thus miss the opportunity to attend the meetings. It is suggested that you watch the township's website for posting of agendas to future items that will be discussed at committee or council. The agendas for meetings are posted on the township website at 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the meetings. Additionally, meeting schedules are also noted on the website for the public to view. If you wish to receive notices by email, it is suggested that you include your email address with your mailing address and your phone number on the attendance sign-up sheet prior to your leaving tonight. Declare this public meeting adjourned at 8:29. Okay. That concludes our public meetings for this evening. And we will now move on to the next items on the agenda. Okay, this is for appointments. There are no appointments, but the next section is a request to address items on the agenda. This is for any item on the agenda and anyone wishing to address those. This is the time to do it now. Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. And there are two items on the consent agenda. The first, the multi-municipal wind turbine working group minutes from October 12th. And secondly, the recommendation report PD 007-18, I believe. No. The Niagara Christian Gleaners site plan authorizing bylaw. And the recommendations for those items are that item 1 be and is hereby received for information. That's the working group's minutes. And that item 2 be and are hereby received and the recommendations contained therein be adopted. I'm looking for a mover for those recommendations. Councillor Trombetta, Councillor Ganyan seconding it. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda, that motion carries. There are no communications for consideration this evening in the staff reports, item P0218, which is the mayor's conflict. Am I right? Yeah. Okay, that item, the recommendations for which are that item PD 001-18 regarding Brian Owens' application for temporary use zoning, file number 1601-017-17 dated January 15th, 2018 be received, and that a recommendation report be presented at a future Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting. I'm looking for a mover on that. Councillor Ganyan, Councillor Bell. Comments? Okay, all in favor? That motion carries. Please note, Madam Clerk, that the mayor did not participate or vote on that item. Item P03-18, that is a recommendation. The recommendations for that report are that PDO 004-18 regarding Aloisi and Yanka Mahalik, application for rezoning, file number 1601-018-17 dated January 15th be received, and that a recommendation report be prepared and presented at the January 29th council meeting once all public agency comments have been received and any changes to the draft zoning bylaw are incorporated as per previous staff report PD 160-17. I need a mover for that. Mayor Joyner and Councillor Trombetta. Comments? Mayor Joyner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the Director of Planning, Mr. Tribble. January 29th, sir, will that be enough time for you to bring forward a recommendation report? I know it's the comments, but usually there's a few months in between a technical and a recommended report.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think it'll depend probably on what we hear from the applicant and the agents in the next couple of days. There was a timing concern, as we had discussed in confidential last month, that generated that language that's in the tech report. But if, as I anticipate, if the purchasers potentially walk away, then the timeline will not be an issue, and presumably will proceed, but we won't be on the same time track. So I'll keep you guys in the loop in terms of what happens. We'll only bring it forward if that appears to be an essential time piece to the puzzle.
Thank you. That's fine. Any other comments with regard to this? Okay. So we may or may not be taking it to the 29th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So all in favor? That motion carries. Okay, item PO3-18. No, that's the one we just did, sorry. PO4-18 with regard to the official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan and condominium applications for RVL Inc. Recommendations are that report PD 009-18 regarding RVL contracting application for official plan amendment, application for rezoning, application for draft plan of condominium, file number 1701-087-17, official plan amendment, file number 1601-014-17, zoning bylaw amendment, file number 2000-086-17, and plan of condominium dated January 15th, 2017, be received. And that a recommendation report be presented at a future Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting once all agency and public comments have been received. We need a mover for that. Councillor Bell and Councillor Bilsma. All in comments? Sorry, I apologize. Councillor Bilsma?
I'm furthering to the concern that I raised earlier. I'm wondering to what degree, like, as if we proceed or as we proceed, I understand we're just sending this for a technical report, but I would like to understand, or I'd like to be told, I guess, that there's no way that we shouldn't take some land for the Spring Creek road allowance. I heard your comment, Chair, about the fact that road allowances are set, but I'm still not comfortable with the fact that this couldn't be a larger road than it is today, especially given our Northwest Quadrant plans. And I'm wondering if we're ever going to take land, this is the time to do it, because nothing's there right now. But if we cross this bridge, if we proceed with this in the way that it is, we really can't go back. And my grave concern is the fact that this road could be quite handy someday in the future, and this with, there's a lot of plans happening around our community that are causing me concern, and because of there's no commitment but potential commitment, and we're kind of hamstrung. So let me clarify that we are looking at some kind of connection to the QEW, some kind of north-south connection, some kind of regional crossing. And one of the most prevalent, it's not confirmed, but the most prevalent is to go back to a plan that started like 40 or 50 years ago with the Bartlett Exchange and a 30 Road, Park Road connection, which would bring a lot of traffic onto Grimsby Road. I believe it's 5 and or 30 Road, vis-a-vis some kind of Yonge Street connection. So I'm thinking that potentially truck traffic could be coming down up Park Road, get off of Bartlett Street, come into our community on our north-south route, come down Grimsby Road 5, and then come across. Now, I understand signage and all those kinds of things. We could be directing them down Yonge Street and such, but I'm concerned that this may be a very convenient road, whether or not they're trucks or whether there's vans or whether they're just cars. So I'm very concerned that at this time, if we approve this, we're basically writing in stone that this is going to be a very, very small road, a small community road, and maybe at this time, I'm wondering how set in stone is it, this road allowance, and could we not grab a meter or two so that we could have the extra room for, say, sidewalks or some boulevarding or something like that, just to have that calming effect, just to give a little bit more larger sight lines. If this becomes, in a future plan, another very large residential community just north of Spring Creek Road. There could be a lot of pedestrians coming into our community down these roads, and so I want to make sure that we're giving ourselves enough room. So,
if I can direct your question for some information with regard to the width of roads, because I think, Councillor Bilsma, you've struck my concern now. Because if we're going to have residential and we're going to have a lot of kids and we're going to have a lot of people walking, I want to know that our plans so far are going to protect us from having that being anything more than an urban collector road. And I would sure not want to see a truck route going down there. So I want to do the other side of that, but I'll wait my turn to see how we prevent truck roads from being on that road. He's still got the floor. I got you, Councillor, Mayor Joyner. But Mr. Treble, maybe you're the other thing too, but might we just talk about the way we take roads and how subdivisions happen and what horses have already left the stable with regard to that road and the future along Spring Creek?
Through you, Madam Chair, a couple of thoughts that come to mind. First, the official plan will have some policy guidance in terms of what standard widths various roads should be. Off the top, I'm not sure what a collector road standard width would be, and I'm not sure if any of us have our official plan with us to be able to double check that right here, but we can certainly look into that. The second part of it is that the standard place to take road widenings would be at the site plan, which is not before us tonight. That would be yet to come. So this is not the be-all and the end-all, drop-dead kind of discussion to have tonight. It's something to figure out and discuss and make sure we consider properly before a site plan is granted any sort of approval. The third thing, if I may, Madam Chair, is I'm looking at pages 182 and 183, or at least I think that's what the numbers are. And it would appear that the 30 Road Station Street piece actually has a widening taken off along at least this particular portion of property. So as much as there was an allusion to a reduction to a setback to that line, it looks like that line is already actually set back a bit. So the widening may in fact already have been taken there, which is probably a good piece of the puzzle. So from my perspective, I'm happy to take back the concern. I follow the concern. I think I also follow the other side of the concern in terms of the volumes of traffic and pedestrians and whatnot. So the one good thing is, as we do the studies for urban boundary expansion going forward, there are a number of studies that are part of that whole analysis, and an individual at the back of the room wants to enlighten us on a little bit of that later. Those studies are going to look at not just the area for growth, but also Smithville proper and how we as a new community need to grow. So transportation linkage is external to what's urban now, and inside what's urban now will certainly be a key component of that. Presumably, in a couple of years' time, we'll know if this is a key collector for growth of the whole community or whether this is, you know, a sub-collector kind of thing somehow. We'll understand a lot of that, hopefully, in the next couple of years as these studies come together.
So Councillor Billsman, you still have the floor?
Thank you very much. So I appreciate that. And so then I have just I'm just petrified that we're jumping the gun here. Because whatever decision we make with respect to this property sets in stone a number of restrictions or limitations. And I'm wondering, first of all, I guess backing up, why this property is allowed to be developed, I think, ahead of schedule, so to speak. So with respect to our discussions on the Northwest Quadrant, there are components in place that were in existence. And some of them are quite long-term components. The Greek Hall, for example, has been there for
I'm giving you a lot of liberty here, Councillor,
Yeah.
Councillor, but this piece of land is within the urban boundary.
I-
And it is being brought forward as a public meeting tonight.
Correct.
It has a technical report. Your concerns are being noted very carefully by the staff and other colleagues of yours around the table. But, as the directors pointed out, our place for taking additional road widening, which we've already seemingly taken it, would be at the site plan. We're not near the end of the road on this application. We're giving comment to the developer to say, come back and listen to what we've got there. But it would be irresponsible, because there are others around this table I think are going to speak about the safety. So your concern is being heard. I want you to know that.
Okay.
You can continue, but it would be irresponsible for us to suggest that we don't have the proper process in place to get to an end that will address your concerns and others.
I guess, we've talked about the road widening, but I'm also talking about the way that this small property could interface with future development that may be, we haven't committed, we have no, other studies are still, have to come to bear on what happens just immediately adjacent to this property. So my concern has to do with the fact that if we don't get this piece of the puzzle right without a view to what happens around it, we may run into very similar problems that we had with respect to the discussion surrounding the Northwest Quadrant. As an example, in our experience, I would love it if I would love it if the developer could say, just sit on this.
Counselor, we can't force that.
I understand
We made a
that.
mistake by letting it in the urban boundary, zoning it, and allowing it to come forward.
Well, that
So-
was
so-
my first comment.
So, look, whenever you draw a line in the sand about where your urban boundary is, you always worry about how you're going to feather it into whatever else you're going to put out there. You're going to have a heck of a lot of opportunity about that because we're going to be going through that as we go through this year. But I just need you to know, you can't stop what's already in there and approved,
I understand.
okay?
Uh,
You just like,
Madam Chair, sometimes I understand what you're saying. We don't want to speak too prematurely, let the process run its course, let's have the inputs and those kinds of things. And sometimes I'm very reticent because I don't think it's quite ready. And then sometimes I feel like I've missed a turn. So I'm trying to say that this is very important to me.
got it.
And I think it's very important for our community.
Got
And
it.
so I am, throwing up some concerns. Not red flags, lots of yellow flags. And I want to get that on the record because I think it's incumbent that we make this puzzle, we imagine what's going to go around this so that this piece of the puzzle fits very much in line with the way that the whole council thinks about how development should go, where it should go, and if we could be prophets, what the studies that may come down the pipe might suggest. But if we were prophets, we wouldn't be doing this counselor job, perhaps. Huh?
So I hear you. I think we've heard you.
Yeah.
And I really
I
want
just
to
want
give
to
you
get
a
it on the
chance.
record.
But your one comment about you just wish the landowner would sit on it, that's a wish.
Maybe a little bit, but
And you can make that wish, but we also can't be prophets. We have to deal with what we put in stone, Councillor Bilsma, in the official plan when we allowed this piece to come in. So I hear you, and I know you've got concerns, and I'm going to give mine, which might not make you happy because,
But I can't cut you off because I'm the chair. That's it.
okay. Okay, are you done? Because I'm happy to give you as much time as you want, but I can't let you go on assuming that we can stop this.
I understand. So I threw out that as a bit of a, pie in the sky wish. I know I don't own the property, so I understand. My comment at this time, I think I'm going to conclude with that. I've registered a bunch of yellow flags, and we'll let it go at that. I know we get other kicks at the can, so I'm just establishing a, kind of a paradigm that I would like to see go forward on with respect to this property and others.
Thank you, Councillor Bilsma. Are you complete?
I am.
Great. That's fine. Mayor Joyner.
Madam Chair. Councillor Bosman, I think you've done a very good job of bringing forward your concerns, and Madam Chair, I think you've done a very good job of setting the parameters for the councillor, and Councillor, we feel what you feel. We understand what you're saying, and you've said it very well, Madam Chair. You've defined the parameters of the discussion. I think what needs to be said here, and it kind of was alluded to a little bit, but this is not the only potential conversation about an east-west bypass. And the bigger picture here, I will go to Mr. Treble to talk about, but Mr. Treble, could you talk about a potential South Grimsby Road 7 to Yonge Street bypass connecting with the
7 or
north-south
12?
escarpment crossing? Through you, Madam Chair.
7 or 12, Mr.
I think
Mayor?
it's
I think
7.
it's 12.
Let's-
Whatever.
Mr. Treble?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not sure that we have enough in specifics to be able to put any numbers or any roads on the table tonight, but a lot of it depends on where the growth in Smithville occurs. If the growth in Smithville occurs in the north and west, where the pressures for growth seem to be the greatest. Then there is thinking that some sort of a bypass that veers off of Regional Road 20 out near South Grimsby 7, heading north, which would then kind of align with an extension of Bartlett South, probably in the range of Yonge Street someplace, might link to not a bad east-west connection. But that's just a planner's view. What the transportation people say down the road, we're not there yet. But that thinking then would suggest that it takes some pressures off this particular crossing. So we're not going to know all of the answers as we try and make these decisions. But like you're referring to, Madam Chair, that the catch we're in is we're dealing with an existing urban boundary that's been in this way since I think the 80s somewhere, from what I can tell in history, when these lands came in. And the province will penalize us if we have undeveloped lands inside our urban boundary as we try to justify more lands. So we're caught in this catch-22 where we need to do the best we can with what we know today and make the best decisions. Are we going to be perfect? Probably not. But can we do the best we can? Hopefully so. You know, internal to staff, we've been having numerous discussions, and as we get a team put together of consultants, hopefully we'll have a team in place that can help us put some better recommendations before this committee before we're dealing with a recommendation report on this file. And if I may, Madam Chair, there's just one more thought I had. The concern around this being an entrance feature in the urban design piece is absolutely critical. I fully agree. Even though this might not be the entrance feature for long term, it is an entrance feature today. I was playing around with a bit of a sketch that I thought might work.
I'm not sure we want that broadcast too many places.
But my staff were laughing at it, so it needs a bit of work, apparently.
This is an alternate plan for the site itself. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Treble?
To avoid the backyard side or
Side
yard entrance issues that I share the concerns of.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing else I wanted to say is that I totally share what Councillor Bosma is thinking and what he stated and the prematurity of this whole plan coming forward. The other thing that kind of sort of bugs me is the fact that it's right next to agricultural property. So, I mean, when people buy into this condominium, saying that it goes forward, you're going to have all kinds of farm implements at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I know certain farmers like to combine and disc at all hours of the night, and they're going to have to know that there is going to be noise and there's going to be dust and there's going to be a normal farming practice because we are a farming community right next to this condominium complex. So that has to be taken into consideration too as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Others? So I hope, Councillor Bilsma, that you feel that you had a chance to put forward your concepts and your concerns. Because as chair, I have to focus on keeping the meeting going straight to a place where we know we have parameters. And so if I refocused where it was you were going, that is the reason why I did. Having said that, I take an alternate view to where you're going because I see that we have a Spring Creek Road that hasn't been well defined, and I pray that as we move forward and define where it is that transportation will move, which will be a combination between the region on regional roads and us on secondary roads, that we are going to be very cognizant of the fact that those houses all facing Spring Creek now are not going to want transport trucks going through them, and I would hope that with our planning for future growth, including the region, we are going to have a way to get transport trucks and transportation to our industrial core, which is on the other side of the street, there without impacting people who are in the residential areas. So I understand, but I want to keep Spring Creek as modest as we can. Wide boulevards, wide sidewalks, whatever you do, but whatever's been compromised so far needs to stay that way because we've already got the south side of Spring Creek, which has a bunch of houses facing out onto it and a few side yards. But I would hate to see that we are now going to have the infiltration of commercial and industrial traffic into what will ultimately be our downtown, an expansion at some point. So we need to think 25 years out, 30 years out, not 3 years out. So I think we have the concerns of traffic, both today and into the future. We have a broader traffic issue that I'd like to see us address, but unfortunately, this application is there, and all we can do is preserve for what it is we have preserved for in the plan that we have on the record right now. So I hope to see a rejigging of this whole application before it comes back. It would be appropriate because the intensification, while it meets the standards, is for the region-wide densities that we have to achieve, not on one block. And I would hate to think that we're going to compromise an exit, an egress into the property so close to a corner. So I'm sure we'll see this application again. I hope we do. And I hope your little picture gets circulated, and we haven't seen it yet. So the item is properly placed before you, members of committee, and duly moved and seconded. Are there any other comments regarding it? Having seen none, I ask for a vote. All in favor? That motion carries. Okay. We are on to item P0518, which is a 911 public emergency reporting services address remediation regarding Dufferin Avenue. It's the suffix correction. This is another long-standing issue. The recommendations are that PDO 1118 regarding 911 public emergency reporting services addressing remediation Dufferin Avenue suffix correction dated January 15th be received, and that it be and is hereby recommended that the public consultation meeting occur with the residents of Dufferin Avenue prior to a bylaw being presented to council for consideration, and that staff be authorized to circulate notice of intent to correct the suffix prior to ratification of this report by Township Council, such that the opportunity to consider this correction can happen at the February Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting. I need a mover. Councillor Bell, Councillor Bilsma. Comments? Councillor Gannan?
I just wanted to bring forward the point about the public meeting, and I did express my concern already to Mr. Treble. Many of the people who live on Dufferin Avenue /Street have either grown up there or have lived there for a good chunk of time and have lived on it as Dufferin Street. So I just wanted to bring forward the concern that this public meeting may very well turn out to be people more in favor of street as opposed to avenue. And so my question to Mr. Treble is, are we prepared, even though 2 out of 3 documents or whatever says avenue, are we prepared to go with what the public feel is important at this point in time?
Mr. Treble?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think that's the benefit of going to the public before we put the recommendation report together is, you know, there, as has been alluded to, there appears to be 3 bylaws that apply to this particular road. 2 of them refer to it as an avenue and 1 of them refers to it as a street. But if we end up having to change 2 bylaws to make them all the same, or 1 bylaw, you know, as long as we do it right, I guess ultimately that's the goal. And if there's a preference one way or the other, then that's what we'll bring, you know, back after having heard the public. As I shared before the meeting, the approval at the time was clearly for Dufferin Avenue, but it's been long-standing for some time now. I don't know how long-standing, but it appears to have been a street in a lot of people's minds for a long time. So we'll have that discussion, I think, and go from there as to whether it should be a street or an avenue. The interesting thing, of course, is in today's standards, that matters. 20 years ago, whether it was a street or an avenue, probably didn't matter. But now, for 911 purposes, these are the kind of things that the region's telling us regularly we have to stop being inconsistent about. We have to get consistency down so that delivery of emergency services and other things can happen without delay. So that's part of the reason why this is forefront.
Councillor,
Okay, well, just further to that, back to Mr. Treble. Having had this discussion already at pre-agenda, it made me wonder even further. The region has defined so many things, as has the province. Are there specific definitions of what an avenue should be? Like, I think the general feeling years ago was, you know, streets run north-south, avenues run east-west, whatever. I could have that backwards.
That was New York City.
But the bottom line is, have they defined that? Have they said? Because Dufferin Street, Avenue, whatever it is actually a cul-de-sac at the end. So an avenue to me would imply it goes through to something else. So I don't know if there's a definition that we should be following even, in the future especially.
Madam Chair, if there was a definition, it would be in this 911 PERS document that we refer to, and unfortunately, I don't have it with me tonight, and Rachel's the one that's kind of been assigned the task. So I will ask her, and it'll be part of our report back, if there are definitions, what they are.
Thank you.
If it comes back Boulevard. The odds makers are not taking numbers on it as yet. So, Councillor Trombetta?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It's kind of struck something in my head because over the holidays I had to bring my child.
Microphone.
It's on.
Yeah, but you.
Sorry, I had to bring one of my children to a residence, and there's multiple streets that we have in this community that have multiple names.
Silver.
Silver's one, and South Grimsby Road 12 is another one. And Cambro. So this kind of triggered because I was late at an appointment in Hamilton, and I sent my mother, who's been a mayor of this community, to go pick up my daughter, and I told her it was on South Grimsby Road 12, and she got lost. She knocked on a bunch of doors, but there's two South Grimsby Road 12s. There's another one off of Sheridan, prior to Sheridan Court off of Mud Street there. That's the other South Grimsby Road 12. So what I'm trying to say here is, so if GPS is coming up wrong for people, because the new system, obviously I know because for a fact when I used to live on Silver Street, they'd type in Silver Street and then end up in Smithville.
Correct.
How do we fix this issue? Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Treble. Because there's, sorry, just for the record, Councillor Bowsma said there's Cambro, that's the same. There's Silver, there's South Grimsby Road 12, and obviously Dufferin.
There's likely others that you haven't even mentioned.
There probably is, but these are the ones off the top of my head.
Through
So,
you,
Mr.
Madam-
Treble, please.
Through you, Madam Chair, there is an inventory of errors, if I can call them that the region has identified because they have, I guess, number one, they work with the emergency services people, so if there are concerns, they get brought to the regional staff's attention. The other thing is that they have been looking at the various road inventories that are out there and have been identifying errors and inconsistencies as they have been looking at the various documents, and they have identified a lot of the ones that were just mentioned. They have assigned it to the township to attempt to fix those, and we're trying through planning to proceed with some of them. You'll recall we had a lady by the name of Sarah Mauder here for a while who was assisting us with some of the issues, but we started picking off a lot of the small ones. A lot of the ones that are being mentioned are very large issues, like Silver is going to be a big project to try and get that one resolved and figure out what the right name is as we go forward. And ultimately, it's going to take a bylaw of this council. So whatever process will involve this group in whatever form it is as we go forward, and will require bylaws of this council to properly name the roads. And I'm told, Madam Chair, even if it's a regional road, the region expects the township to do the work and figure out what the road is. It may need a bylaw at the regional level as well, but they'll do that based on the direction of the lower tier municipality. So there's a lot of work for this group to do in this room, and sadly, at the planning level, we just don't have the staff resource to dedicate to this, so it's been dragging on for quite some time.
But you have repaired some.
We have repaired some, yes, but not the big ones, sadly.
Madam
you.
Chair, sorry, just one more
Councillor
question.
Trombetta?
So for Silver, which I grew up on Silver, originally it was RR2 Caister Center. 960 RR2 number Caister Center was our municipal address. Then it
Regional
was
65.
Then it was Regional Road 65. Then it turned to Silver Street. So the regions changed all these through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Treble? Like, when did Silver from Regional Road 65? Or is there somebody else that's gonna?
No, sorry. This is before my time. Through you, Madam Chair, I understand that the fire chief, a fire chief back in the 90s by the name of Charlie Street, was involved in some of that work, but I also believe that Mr. Gannan was probably involved in some of that naming stuff. So I'm not exactly sure You know, but the fire department of the township level was certainly one of the key people involved. Where silver came from and all of that, I can't
So the
answer
region
that.
didn't, sorry, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Treble, the region didn't name Regional Road 65 Silver. We did? That's what my question is.
I would believe it was done through the township fire chief, but I can't say that with certainty.
Okay. Just for,
Just before we go any further, I want to remind all members, all people in the gallery, which I think I said this, but all cell phones, pagers, and PDAs to be turned off. And additionally, for your information, we are audio and video recording this meeting.
thank you, Madam Chair.
Pardon me, Councillor Trombetta.
So furthermore, how do we go forward, Madam Chair, to rectify these issues? Is it to come at a later date? I make a recommendation later? How do we go further to rectify some of these issues, Madam Chair?
So you share my pain with Silver Street when my stuff from Staples gets delivered into Smithville. But I believe that I know that we have talked about this with the director before, and I'm going to let him jump in here. We are working on it.
Okay.
We have given it the resources we have, and I think that preference is not being given to any particular street. They're dealing with it as they can. So unless somebody has other information, we are dealing with it.
Okay.
There's no question, Madam Chair, though, that if there's a priority that needs to be elevated, you know, then perhaps we need to look at a contract staff or something rather to move some of this along, because there's going to be some additional resources needed to pull off some of this work for sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Councillor Bilsma.
I guess I just want to state for the record that this Crown Road, Rosedene Road fiasco in my ward is another one of those examples of just absolute confusion. So, enough said. That's
I have one of
crazy.
those problems in my ward, too.
It's Rosedene Road,
Yes.
and Crown Road gets kind of thrown into the mix, but the roads don't align. Rosedene's over here, then there's a short section on the end of one Rosedene Road that's Crown, and it jumps over an entire concession and continues on as
Becomes
Rosedene.
Rosedene Road.
It is something that we need to find a solution, because it's mind-boggling how that gets changed around fourth concession.
Thank you.
Councillor Ganan, I understand.
Maybe
You may
I should
be.
just jump in and say that the roads had historical names based on the three prior to amalgamation areas. And so the issue with 911 was that Caister named their own roads, South Grimsby named their roads, and of course Gainsborough Township named their roads. And some of them didn't intersect, some of them didn't connect, but they all had similar names. The job of the 911 staff at the time was to try to align numbers to each of those properties, not rename the roads, but align numbers so that they corresponded with the roads that extended beyond West Lincoln and came in from other municipalities towards West Lincoln and already had some 911 numbers. So the only new road names that were given during that time were some existing roads in West Lincoln that didn't have names. There were little roads here and there that didn't have a name at all. For example, Matese Road, the piece that comes off of Highway 20, I know that was one of the roads that was named because the Matese family lived there, but it didn't have a name at all. It was just kind of this extension little thing because the highway came in and went around it. So in defense of the fire department of the day, they just dealt with the mess and tried to come up with a logical way for the trucks to be able to respond to calls, but they are not responsible for all those crazy names.
Good answer, Councillor Ganan. Thank you so much. Okay. Is anyone else wishing to talk to this issue? I have it moved and seconded. This is with regard to the naming of Dufferin whatever. So all in favor? That motion carries. Okay. Okay, so now we are on item P 06-18, the delegation of authority to the Director of Public Works relating to on-site construction of primary and secondary services. The recommendation is the PD report PD 006-18 regarding delegation of authority to Director of Public Works relating to on-site construction of primary and secondary services for site plan subdivision and condominium developments dated January 15th be received, and that a delegation bylaw in the form of the draft version found on attachment 1 to this report be approved. I need a mover and a seconder to that. Councillor Trombetta. Councillor Gannan. Councillor Trombetta to the item.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I read this report, and it was saying about leaving out the curbs for the condominium, and be done in the spring. I wish I'm kind of confused why it's coming on planning, and maybe we could have came to Public Works so we could have directed some questions to our director, but obviously it's here tonight. So I had some questions for our director in this case, but I'm thinking sometimes when you're doing a small condominium unit that it's paved, and to leave out the curbs until after the condominium is built to minimize the damage of the curb afterwards. So once the house is done, completed, then the contractor comes back and pours a curb, and the resident has a nice curb instead of having to live with construction 2 or 3 times.
Correct.
So what I would like to see is maybe we can delay the curbs till after the construction of the homes, and they come back and put the curbs, since the curbs aren't already in. Again, so just when you're building, the forklifts and all that kind of stuff come, they damage, they chip, this and that, and then they have to go back and spray out what they need to be replaced and so on and so forth. Then eventually we get new curbs there. But I would like to see it hold off until the development is complete. But again, I'm wondering why this came tonight and not to Public Works. But it's not an issue that it came tonight, but I had some answers, and maybe the director could help us.
Let's see if perhaps, Councillor, Mr. Treble might have some answers for you, but if it's not sufficient, then I understand your concern, and I understand the want to do it, and you've characterized it very well. So the question, Mr. Treble, do you have a general overview?
I can answer, Madam Chair, a little bit. First of all, the reports on this agenda, I guess, because our CAO and I were following up on some delegation authority that we achieved last month, and this one was needed sooner than later to assist with Stepping Stones development out by the new St. Martin's School. So this direction is needed sooner than later. Specifically, I think in this particular case for Stepping Stones, the developer is proposing, or was proposing, to do very much as Councillor Trombetta had suggested, that the curbing towards the end of the project means that you end up with a cleaner, more continuous curb installed at the end, as opposed to one that gets put in and ripped out and put in and fixed and, and repaired and the whole bit. But unfortunately, as I discussed with our Director of Public Works, our engineering standards don't really contemplate anything other than all servicing, primary servicing being installed before. So it may be that ultimately what we need to achieve is a slight modification to the engineering standards to give some flexibility around, say, condo developments, for example, having a slightly different standard. We're not there yet. It's kind of baby steps for now to give the Public Works Director some flexibility, or at least that's all we're trying to achieve in this part of the report. Is I know exactly what Councillor Trombetta is referring to, and that's exactly what the developers would like to achieve, especially in the condo developments.
No further questions, Madam Chair.
Councillor Bell?
I just got one concern. I guess I understand why they want to do the curbs later, and they should be. But my concern, and what are they calling one completed? I've seen this developer 8 years in a complex. Like, do these people have to wait 8 years to get curbs? 5 years? Like, when is that going to happen? Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So, I mean, what we do now is we put the curbs in, and away they go, and that's great. The individual moves in, and all the other stuff that comes with the landscaping. But now they're going to be waiting for curbs. It's like, we need to have some kind of a drop-dead date in there that says, hey, when are you going to get this thing done and when are the curbs going in? That's my biggest concern, because
Councillor Bell's concern is understood. Where do you have this section? And you're saying it's in the delegation. So, Mr. Treble?
I think that's part of the concern we have as well, is, there's no guarantee that a development's going to sell out within the first 12 months or whatever. And And Streamside's another example where the development went on for, I think it's
number of
probably
years.
15 years or getting close to it now since it first started. So if you have to wait that long, it's not fair. Brent's proposal is basically saying, okay, I get it, we'll get you building permits if you commit to doing it. I think May 15th was the date that our Director of Public Works is suggesting to the developer, and he's prepared to work with them to at least that extent. But that's the nature of what Brent's proposing for now.
Councillor Bell?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm okay with this, and this is a one-off. This is not something that's going to be the standard from here on in. This is just this one particular time, and I'm okay with that. But
Councillor Bell, this isn't just this one time, though. I just want to make sure. This is a delegation. It may not be forever, but at this point in time, it's for not just stepping stones. Am I correct, Mr. Treble?
That's correct. It's almost each development has a little nuance somewhere. The example that's brought this forward is stepping stones, but the proposal is to give
Right.
the Director of Public Works a bit of latitude on any file.
I just wanted to make sure that you
yeah,
weren't.
Okay, so I'm not okay with it then, so I'll be voting against it.
I just want to put on the record, just, there are securities, for instance, there are securities maintained that would give ample financial coverage if the works were not done. Am I correct? But that's not an easy process. But if the developer did not act as he had said, we have securities we could draw to put the works in place.
In this particular example that we have before us, we're holding all of the securities. Nothing has been released. In some security, or in some files, there will have been some releases that have occurred along the way, but
So to that end, we have securities on all the developments, and we have developments now. We have security, we've been waiting for quite some time, year and a half to get, 2 years to get certain things done at one of our developments to the north of us, at the Atwater, the Pacific. And what has security's done for us? Zero. Because there they sit, there's the residents, the people we want to bring to our community and make them part of our community, and all we get is phone calls and complaints, nothing's being done, and we got securities. Why aren't we exercising that, saying, you know what, here's the drop dead, get it done. If not, we're getting somebody in to do it, and it's coming out of your funds. We don't do that. That's what scares me about this, because here we go again. So all the securities in the world aren't doing us any good. So, thank you.
Councillor Trombetta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Trowell. I'm kind of agreeing with Councillor Bell, too, in the sense that you don't want it sitting forever, too, right? And it all depends on sales and all that kind of stuff. This date that is set in for, what would you say it was, May, was it?
May 15th.
Is that the drop dead date for the curbs to be completed?
I believe that's Mr. Julian's proposal, yes.
So all curbs to be completed. So my question through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Treble. So our Director of Public Works will be going specifically to condo sites and giving them drop dead dates on when he wants the curb complete. Is that the way I'm kind of reading this report, or am I mistaken here?
Sorry, are you talking on an annual basis?
No. I'm just site specific.
Okay.
The proposal as exists in the municipal engineering standards would require curbing to be installed prior to the issuance of the certificate, so prior to any building permits being achieved. In this particular file, the proposal is to alter that slightly, but that's just a one-off in this case because of the timing and the arrival of winter before they got them installed. But as of right now, the municipal engineering standards say curbing should be installed at the start of the process.
So the conundrum we face is, if we don't give any kind of latitude to the Director of Public Works, a site could be set with no building permits until spring, when a curb could properly be put in. And we don't want them put in the middle of -40. So we have that. And on the other side, we don't want to have the curbs not there beyond the occupancy date. Is that the size of the issue we've got before us?
That's the issue in this case. They're not all
No,
the same.
sorry.
But in this case, that would be a reasonable interpretation of what's before us.
Hang on. Councillor Trombetta still has the floor. I have the mayor and then you, Councillor Bell.
Yeah, Madam Chair, like I said, the only issue I had is I wish that this week could have our Director of Public Works so we can get some more clarification. So I would like to push this item forward to our Public Works meeting if possible.
And we may just go there. I do want to hear the other two people.
Sure.
So
By-
you
by all means,
you
Madam
want
Chair.
to refer this to a meeting that will happen next week?
Correct.
We'll ask our staff what would be problematic with that. Okay, so I'm hearing that it would be fine to move this, but I'll let the mayor, if will allow
So I'm
Mayor
looking, do I need a
just.
seconder for that at the appropriate time, Madam Chair? Or-
I would take it as staff direct. Oh, yeah, right. You want to have it as a motion? Yes, we can have a referral
So at the
motion.
appropriate time, may I have that, Madam Chair?
I'll put it right to you.
Thank you.
Mayor Joyner?
My question, thank you, Madam Chair, is one of a technical question. So through you, Madam Chair, to the Director, does this mean that there'll be no asphalt put down either?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, in this particular case, the base asphalt
Yeah.
was laid.
Yes.
But the curbing was not. So the street right now is basically, I think, an extra wide layer of asphalt to compensate for the missing curb. And then part of that gets ripped out and the curb put in later.
Okay, thank you.
I think we will all benefit from it, having the director here. Anyway, Councillor Bell, sorry.
No, it's going back. I just wanted to make an amendment to what was being proposed, that's all.
So will you second Councillor Trombetta's referral motion?
Yeah, I don't have a problem sending it back. I could do the amendment there. I just,
We're referring it to Planning and Public Works next week. Or sorry, yeah, Public Works next week. Councillor Trombetta is making that motion. Seconder for that motion, Councillor Bell? Okay. Yeah, all those in favor? That motion carries. Okay. Okay. We are at PO 7-17, the building better communities and conservation watersheds. This is a recommendation report for PDO 16-18 regarding Building Better Communities and Conserving Watersheds Act 2017, or Bill 139, dated January 15th. And the motion and the recommendation is for the report to be received. I need a mover for that, Councillor Bilsma and Councillor Gannan. Comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That motion carries. Okay, other business. Item P0818 is just an update, a piece of information for an update on fleabane, which is one of the noxious weeds out in the rural areas. P09-18, which is the recommendation for which is that March 12th, 2018 Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting be held on Monday, March 5th, 2018 to accommodate for staff holidays during the March break. I'm sure that there may be want some discussion, so I have to have a mover and seconder to put it on the table for discussion. Mayor and Councillor Trombetta. Comments? Mayor Joyner.
Thank you. As I read it, quite simply, we just need to write something and send it to the ministry to say, please put fleabane on the obnoxious weed control act. Is that correct?
That could be true, but now we're dealing with the planning meeting. Thank you, Mayor Joyner. That is an appropriate comment, but we're moving on to moving the planning meeting from the 12th to the 5th.
Oh, sorry. I missed my spot. I'm sorry.
Oh, you can go back to that one. Sorry. It is on the table. No, we're moved on. I have a pain, never mind the fleabane. No, what's on the table right now is a discussion, if one wants to be had, of moving the March 12th meeting to March 5th. I do have comment if no one else does, but go ahead. Oh, who wants to speak?
I-
Councillor
me.
Ganan.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, have I been ignoring you?
You have.
I apologize.
Well, I would like to speak because my concern is planning for the public, planning for people who want to make presentations, planning for staff. If March break is notoriously that date, then I think we should be looking longer ahead than the meeting or two before to change it. Just to accommodate the public who might want to take part. I can see that March break itself maybe is not a good time for any kind of a public meeting, especially a planning public meeting. However, to back it up a week, causes a great deal of consternation for others. So I think we need to be looking as a council at, in December of the year before, maybe looking at a long-range schedule of some sort. I know personally I got caught last summer because the decision for the summer meetings wasn't made until June, and we had holiday plans for July, and, those kinds of things happen. But if those dates that are not the normal are caught and changed at an earlier time, I think that would be more appropriate for everyone.
Thank you. My comments are along the same line, except that I know that staff are working on an annual calendar. It's my understanding that's coming forward to admin. And that would be useful, and it addresses the concern that Councillor Ganan brings up, which is that it's we have not yet had an opportunity to look at something that is more than a month or so ahead. At least that's when we think it is, and then these kinds of circumstances come up. And there are a number of issues coming forward with all of the studies that are coming forward, and I know you've touched on them tonight, but I think that we do need to have a long-range view of this. Public meetings are going to be very important because there's some very controversial issues coming forward. And what I would say is, knowing that February could still be loaded up, and having spoken with staff, we could accommodate this by having a heavier schedule in February and in April, and not burdening anyone, because schools are now taking 2 weeks of March break, and we're going to miss different people going off to various holiday retreats, whether it's snow or sun. No. Some schools are getting 2 weeks. Some of the different school systems are getting 2 weeks. They go either a week before and the week of the normal school break, or they go the school break and the week following. Mostly the private schools and or not public in Catholic schools. But it does happen. And there are people who are inconvenienced by us holding public meetings on either the 12th or the 5th. And I've had a problem with that for some time. And I believe that I know that we have staff that wanted to protect it in case we had an urgent issue, but we could accommodate this on either February or April's agenda and not have a meeting during March simply because it is school break. And also we could do this for other times. But so the issue is, do we cancel the meeting? It's not just move it, but could we cancel it? And the convenience of some may be the inconvenience of others, but I don't want to bring that up. Yes, Councillor Trombetta.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Madam Chair. Can we just, I really don't want to refer it back, well, I have no choice but to refer it back to staff to give us some dates, because you know what, a date in February might not work for three of us here. So
it wouldn't be an extra meeting. It would be moving the meeting. It would be just canceling the March meeting and accommodating any reports.
I'm aware
Okay.
of that, Madam Chair. I'm just saying that if we do not cancel the meeting and we move the meeting, like is trying to be proposed, is that it might not be, the date might not be available for other members of committee here tonight. So I was hoping maybe our CAO or clerk could come back to us with some alternate dates that would work for us. Is that what's happening at the moment, Kevin?
I'm not sure, because then you're feeding into the fact that we don't know when the next meeting is, which would be February's. But Madam CAO.
Through you to members of the committee, The issue of having the March break meeting canceled says that because of a staff holiday, but in fact, there are many people that go on holiday during March break, and sometimes it's problematic, and there are sometimes public meetings, and it makes it difficult. It was my suggestion to put this forward, that we change it to the 5th, because sometimes there are lots of pressing planning issues. As you know, we always have a full agenda, and I didn't want to say go ahead and cancel it in case there were important issues that had to be dealt with, so I suggested it be on the 5th. However, having said that, what we could do is we could take any pressing planning issues to council directly, if there happened to be some. So if you wanted to cancel it and we felt there were important issues, we could bring them to your council. If not, they could wait until April. I will say that we do go to a shortened schedule in the summer months, and the report for that is coming to the admin meeting next week. I don't like to cancel too many meetings and have to stack a lot of meetings, because you know how long these nights are. We also have the election coming, so it would behoove us to get most of our reports caught up and done and out of the way before we get into the election season. So I would be okay with canceling the 5th meeting and not having a planning meeting, and as long as we could bring the important issues or issues that were timely in nature and should be addressed to the council meeting.
Sure, thank you. And if Brian wants to shorten up a nice quick planning meeting on council night, that's works perfect for me, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I guess the suggestion is to double up on council. Is that pretty much the idea, is what's going to happen if we do cancel this March 5th meeting?
I would expect that February, we'd have items that were prepared and ready to come, and the director's nodding. Others would be postponed till April, and that would happen, and anything in between would come to
So technically, we
council.
are kind of doubling up in some senses.
Yeah, but we're still going to go right to council if there was an urgent issue.
Thank you,
Oh.
Madam Chair. I think I've raised some other questions.
I think you have. So Councillor Bilsma, Councillor Bell.
Quickly then, Chair, if we turn this down, we're just going to remain with the status quo. It'll be on the 12th and we carry on. If we turn this motion was first and seconded, and so by voting this down, we're just going to go on the 12th and
That would be
carry on,
correct.
and that would be my preference. So I'm going to vote yes.
So to maintain the 12th as the planning committee meeting, you're right. If you voted against the motion on the floor, you would achieve that. Okay? I've got the CAO, but if you don't mind, Councillor Bell. Carolyn.
Through you, if you defeat this motion, you do have a scheduled meeting on the 12th. You could put a motion on to cancel it and defer important items to the council meeting.
Yes. Thank you. Councillor Bell.
So I guess we're all given a schedule. We know what it is for the year. We know when our council meetings are. We know when our committee meetings are. Okay. We get notice of special meetings, but our standard meetings, we know what dates they're on. And I don't know about anybody else in this room, but I know that my life sets around these dates. I plan my schedule, and I do certain things, and things happen. So now it comes into who gets inconvenienced, how many people are going to be inconvenienced with the planning meetings. They know they have these things on the agenda. They know when they're coming forward. I guess I have the belief that if it's that important to you, you're going to be here and or a representative to represent your needs at the planning meeting. So I don't see a need to change it for a few people. To me, it just stays the way it is. Sorry, but I'm opposed to it.
Okay, sorry, I was just making a point of clarification offline.
Real quick.
Councillor Trombetta.
Yeah, and I agree with the other two colleagues. Let's just leave it the same, and if we can't make it on that day, then obviously for just some due reason, some member of council can't do it, then they can't do it. But I would just keep it for the 12th.
Okay, so we're all here. I'm seeing a slowdown in the people wishing to talk to it. So if you want to leave it on the 12th, you defeat this motion, okay? If you want to do something else, I'll entertain a motion after we've defeated this. So right now, if you want the 12th, defeat this motion. If you want the 5th, vote yes. Okay, Councillor Bilsma's back. All in favor Those voting against? Or contrary-minded, as a friend of mine used to always say. Okay, that motion is lost. Seeing no one wishing to make another motion at this time, I will move on to, thank you very much for your endurance and the heat even I'm feeling tonight. It's okay. We only have small items to take care of from now until midnight. Item P1018 is just other matters of business of an informative nature for members of committee. I'll start on my right. Councillor Bell? Good. Thank you. Councillor Bellsma? No, I'm happy because it means we get out of here a minute earlier, and I think we have to turn the temperature down.
And I have nothing to say, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ganan? Mayor Joyner?
Not at this time.
Councillor Trombetta?
No, not at this time, Madam Chair.
Members of staff, I'm looking for hands. There are none. And I have no comments at this point in time. So, there is no new business, which moves us into confidential. And before I look for a motion to go into confidential, I would ask that we understand the items we're going to deal with, of which there are a few. There's P11-18, which is a legal matter, an OMB appeal, Kazan, with the applicable closed session exemptions being personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal and local board employees, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. That will be a verbal update. A verbal update also on the OMB appeal to the comprehensive zoning bylaw, Phelps Homes, with the applicable closed session exemptions being personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before an administrative tribunal affecting the municipality or local board, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And the third item is P13-18, which again is a legal matter about the urban boundary expansion, and the applicable closed session exemptions are personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before an administrative tribunal affecting the municipality or local board, and the advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. That, too, will be verbal. And item P14-18, which is a personnel matter with regard to the fire department. And the applicable closed session exemption is personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and that will be a verbal update. I need a motion to go into camera, Councillor Trombetta and Mayor Joyner. All those in favor? That motion carries. So we are moving into closed session. Thank you very much to staff and those attending.